Hello, Anisha. Thank you so much for joining me. So do you want to tell the people a little bit about yourself?
So I am Anisha Patel. I am a pharmacist, obviously. I'm currently working in pediatrics, specializing in pediatric palliative care at the Evelina London Children's Hospital. I also am a lecturer at the moment at King's College London with the postgraduate team. So this is with the team that do the independent prescribing course once you have graduated pharmacy. And I am the founder and the host of the Pharmacist Diaries podcast. I guess I'm also a mum, a wife, a mum to be to my second child. So that's kind of a quick overview.
Congratulations again for the new baby on the way. So exciting. So obviously you're a pharmacist that's actually working in a hospital, more specialized. And then you're also a lecturer, which is really exciting. Something that I personally look up to, and definitely something that I would want to do one day in my lifetime. So bringing you on board was definitely one of the things I wanted to make sure I'd done, having you as part of this series. What is Evelina Hospital? Some people may not know, what Evelina Hospital is, and what kind of patients do you see there?
So the Evelina in the UK, we've got sort of very specialist hospitals that are called tertiary centres. So usually you would see like your primary care physician or your GP, so a standard doctor in the community if you were unwell. If you needed to be referred to a hospital, they would step you up to secondary care. But even if you have a very specialist condition or something that's very difficult to treat or quite unique or rare, you might have to go to a tertiary centre, which is what Evelina is. And there's quite a few of them, and it's only for pediatrics. So we've got a whole host of kind of patients that we see. We've got a really big kind of neonatal unit, which is like 55 beds, a very large pediatric ICU, which is like 30 plus beds. And the main conditions that we treat are children who have problems from a cardiology perspective, from a neurology perspective, so epilepsy, complex epilepsies, any kind of neurodevelopmental issues. We do general surgery, we have general medicine, so your standard, problems that you would come in with as a child, because if you live in the local area, that would be your local hospital to attend, which is amazing because it's a great place. We also have a renal center, so we do renal transplants and lots of urology issues. So we do have a huge variety of patients, but we're part of a much larger hospital called Guy's and St Thomas's.
So I want to kind of scale back a little bit and talk about you getting into pharmacy and what your desires were. I've heard a bit of your story, I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I know your story, but if you wanted to share just how you decided you wanted to be a pharmacist. I know that pharmacy wasn't the initial thing that you wanted to do, and then also just how you journeyed through to get to where you are now.
I'm currently 11 years qualified, so still relatively new, I would say. Some people would say that's really experienced. But for me, I just feel like there's so much more to achieve. So I feel like a baby in the pharmacy world. I mean, I'm working with, my manager, for example, has 26 years of experience in pediatrics in renal disease. Legend.
Wow.
So I feel like, whoa, I've only got 3 years of experience in pediatrics. I'm a baby. Yeah. So, I still feel very new to pharmacy sometimes because there's always something to learn, which is so great about this profession. My parents owned a pharmacy. So I grew up in a community pharmacy, working weekends and things like that. It wasn't the reason why I became a pharmacist, but it was an environment that I was obviously exposed to. They're not pharmacists. They used to hire pharmacists and locums, but they did it as a business. When I was around 15, we moved to the US. So I went to high school there. And then I went to university there, did my undergraduate degree in biology and chemistry. So the kind of plan was that I would do medicine, and actually I wanted to be a pediatrician. But you have to take an MCAT exam to get into medical school, and my grades were average. I would have probably needed to take a year out and retake them in order to get accepted into a medicine course. And during that time, I kind of didn't want to wait. I was very impatient about having to take a year out because I'd already done 4 years of university. And I was kind of comparing myself a little bit too much with my UK friends who would have finished university after 3 years and then got jobs. And I was like, I'm already behind. I feel like I just want to, you know, get on with my life, and, you know, be a grown up. Boy, was I wrong in some of these kind of thought processes, but it is reality. That's what happened. So at the time, my dad and I kind of chatted about other options, and you know, he kind of suggested that why don't you just go for pharmacy instead and apply from the US back in the UK over the summer holidays and just see if you get accepted to any schools. Oddly enough, within a month, I got accepted. So moved back to the UK, started pharmacy. During this time, you know, I worked as a like a dispenser and kind of over-the-counter assistant in a community pharmacy for the whole 4 years. When I got my pre-registration year, so when I was training, I decided I 100% wanted to go to hospital. I wanted to try something different. And from there, I applied for a residency program. So I was quite like determined to go down the hospital route. So I was kind of discovering elements of pharmacy that, you know, could I pursue this field? I loved everything. That was my problem. I genuinely loved everything. I couldn't decide, you know, oh, you know, when I become a specialist, what is it that I really want to do? I was a kind of a good generalist. But during that time, I met my husband, who was living in Dubai. So I kind of had to make that decision as to whether or not I would move to be with him. And we did long distance for the entire 3 years. While I was a resident, I was a machine, kind of doing night shifts and finishing work at 8 a.m. and getting on a bus from Oxford to Heathrow to catch an 11 o'clock flight, going there for a weekend, and then swapping shifts with friends so that I could take the night flight back from Dubai and jump on the bus again and go straight to work from the bus for the 11 a.m. shift on a Monday or Tuesday, just so we could see each other. Yeah, so we used to see each other every 8 to 10 weeks. And I kind of knew, you know, this relationship was going to stick. So I had to make that decision, and it wasn't very hard. I chose love, and I said, okay, well, there's lots of hospitals in the UAE. I'm going to wing it. I'm just going to go there. I'm going to figure it out. But then it was hard when I got there because it was quite difficult to find a job, because hospital pharmacies aren't as clinical, or they're working towards it, but they aren't as clinical as the UK. So pharmacy teams are a lot smaller, and you are kind of based a lot more in the dispensary. So it was very different to what I was used to and different to what I wanted to progress towards. I was actually considering leaving pharmacy or coming back home after 10 or 11 months because I literally couldn't find anything. And community pharmacy, I wasn't even getting interviews because they can pay different nationalities different salaries. So a lot of the time in community pharmacy, they were hiring pharmacists from the Philippines or India and then paying a lot less than what a British pharmacist would expect. So whenever I used to apply, I didn't even get an interview, because they know that my salary expectations are probably quite high. So it was quite frustrating. So I actually flew home. I was literally about to fly home, and I said, I'll locum at home. I'm losing my clinical skills. You know, I don't want to not be able to work because I've been a machine for the last few years, and I can't cope with just relaxing, and not working and not earning an income, and supporting my new life as a married woman. So I was about to go home, and this company called and said that there's this job available at this at a government agency working with ambulances, and they need a pharmacist. So I was like, oh great, like I'll attend the interview. Boy, did I just like it had no idea exactly what this job was going to be about. It was an hour plus commute each way, but I was like, I really want a job, and I really want to stay here, and I really want to be with my husband. So thankfully I got the position, and boy, was it the best decision that I made, because it was where I became the Formula One pharmacist for Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. I became a leader in pharmacy, and I learned so many skills. I got to build my own pharmacy. I got to go from a paper-based system to electronic, and being the specialist who develops that system, all the processes, like on my own with specialist IT experts. And it was just amazing. I learned an incredible amount in a very new space, in a new environment. And this is where I realized where I absolutely loved service improvement and kind of project management is my thing. And I discovered it by chance. Yeah. But obviously I didn't see patients this entire time. So it was a very high level leadership job. I didn't have the opportunity to see patients, and I missed it. I really missed it. I loved communicating with patients and kind of like being around people. So I left that job to go to Cleveland Clinic, the hospital, and went back to direct patient care for a few years, which was also a really good opportunity. A lot of the skills that I learned during this time and this opportunity really have made me who I am. A lot of the unique opportunities that I was able to experience has given me confidence and kind of made me think outside the box, that actually there is so much that pharmacy has to offer, and there's so much that you can do with pharmacy that is outside of the norm of what a UK sort of pharmacy student would normally get exposed to. I went out my comfort zone so many times, but I absolutely loved it. And taking that risk each and every time was worth it. I can promise you that. And it's really important to kind of step outside your norm. It's important to try something new and really experience something different, because you have no idea how many kind of transferable skills that's going to give you. Yeah. I was able to come back to the UK and apply for management jobs and kind of skip the band 7 roles because of the jobs that I had in the UAE.
I think this is so exciting because from speaking with you over the past few months, I've realized how many similarities there are in regards to just wanting to step outside the comfort zone, wanting to do things that are scary, things that are non-conventional. And you've definitely encouraged me a lot just in my own journey. You know, we've had conversations about the different things I've seen and experienced whilst being here in Canada, and some of the frustrations, I guess, that, I felt as well. And I think that one of the things that I've learned pharmacists like to do is kind of stay in their boxes. Sometimes we don't realize, as you said, how many transferable skills we actually have just from working in diverse areas and environments. How did you get to that point? Did it take time for you to get to the point where you were like, you know what, I actually can do different things? I don't have to just stay in this box that they've created for us as pharmacists. Did that take a process? Did it take time? What kind of had to happen for you to have that click in your mind?
The initial reason was adventure, because I love traveling and I love doing things different. I love trying unique opportunities. So for me, having that curiosity was definitely, it's part of my personality. Even now I'm living in the UK, but I keep saying to my husband, like, where's our next adventure? I have looked up working as a pharmacist in Singapore and kind of like the Cayman Islands and Bahamas, because British pharmacists can go there. So I have been keeping an eye out on opportunities that arise elsewhere. So this is my curiosity to explore the world. That has definitely kind of given me that grounding to keep looking, and I'm itching to get out and do something different and take my family with me. I was fortunate enough to meet someone who lived abroad, so I kind of had to make that choice. He was very surprised as to how easy it was for me to say yes. I was like, yeah, definitely. Of course I'm coming. What if, what's wrong with you? Because he wasn't expecting that I would just give up my life like that and do something so bold. So it is part of who I am. But while I was there and the jobs that I was in, all the entire 5 years, don't get me wrong, I missed the NHS. I did not appreciate, that's you. Yeah. I did not appreciate what I was in. I did not appreciate the jobs that I had. I did not appreciate the value that those experiences were giving me. The only time that truly clicked was when I came back to the UK and I was preparing for interviews, and I started journaling about all the things I had achieved, and how those skills from those experiences would then transfer over to the job that I was planning on applying to back in the hospital. Sometimes you're just so wrapped up in life and work and the day to day that you just sometimes don't appreciate the small things. But I'm very much learning to appreciate the small things in life now, and my mindset is definitely evolving to not think about, I think a lot of it was comparing myself to colleagues and worrying that I was getting left behind again. I felt that way when I moved to America and compared myself to friends who had finished university and already got jobs. And then I did it again. And mentally, I was comparing myself to pharmacist colleagues, people I did residency with, who got these amazing clinical jobs and like specialist areas, and they were just smashing it. And I was like, oh, like, this is what I want to be doing. But I just didn't realize what I was being like involved, what I was involved with was giving me a far better experience than having followed the standard pathway.
And I think that's something that we all do, and one thing I'm learning now is to focus on my own path. I believe in timing, and I think that timing is so important. It doesn't mean I'll never get to that position. I've seen some of my friends get jobs at really big organizations, really like aspiring roles, and I'm like, oh my God, like when am I going to be able to break into that? But I believe that everything happens for us in our own time based on our lane. Obviously, you still have to do the work to continue to like develop yourself, build your skills, go for opportunities. Like, you told me to just like keep applying, keep doing whatever you need to do. But timing is so key, and comparing ourselves is a big thing as well. I listened to a couple of your podcasts, and one of the things that you spoke on was like self-compassion and just having compassion for yourself, in whatever season or path that you're in. So how did you like apply that to yourself? Like, the times you were in Dubai and maybe it was, I know that you had some time, it was quite frustrating finding a role, not really enjoying it. How did you apply self-compassion in those times?
Last year, I started doing some group coaching. So I was a participant in getting coached. I did it with my husband, which was a wonderful experience. And we've met a really amazing group of friends. And during this experience, we had to do a lot of reflection about who we are, our values, our purpose in life, like what it is that we want to achieve, what we're passionate about. And through that journaling and kind of regular reflection on who I am and who I want to be, I discovered that I am really not very kind to myself. And my husband used to say it to me all the time, and I just kind of ignored it, to be honest. Not in a mean way, but he said to me a few times that, would you say that to a patient? Like, or would you say that to me? Yeah. I'm like, obviously not. He's like, well, why are you saying it to yourself?
It's so funny because I feel like we don't play it when it's us. Sometimes I'm like, I wouldn't say that to like someone else who I love. Like, I wouldn't say it to my partner, I wouldn't say it to my family, but we downplay it when it comes to our, us.
Yeah. So now I question myself. If I say something negative, or I stop myself in my tracks when something negative comes up, or I've been finding something hard. So pregnancy, at the moment, I'm 36 weeks, but I've had gestational diabetes. I've been on insulin. My diet has been completely turned around. I'm finger pricking, 6-7 times a day, plus injecting 3 times a day. And then I've had insomnia. So I'm sleeping about 2 hours, maybe 3 hours for 8 months now, day in, day out. And it's like torture. And plus working full time, commuting 3 hours a day, being a mum, being a wife, doing the podcast to the best of my ability, which has been hard. And I have slowed down because I just haven't been able to keep up again, because I've been compassionate this time. But I've had to remind myself many a times that, you know, would you say what you're saying to yourself to other people? And then I stop myself and say, be compassionate. It's been only in the last couple of years that I've really, I would say a year and a half, to be honest, max, where I've really understood that self-compassion is important and valued. And now that I understand it, and I've not been kind to myself all these years, I'm always talking about it because I feel like there's a lot of people who do. Even at work, I hear people sometimes and I'm like, oh my God, why are they talking so badly to themselves? And then I say, like, be compassionate. And they look at me and they're like, you're right. I don't know why I said that. And so people just forget, and you're just in the heat of the moment and your emotions just take over. And it's that's also okay. But it's also realizing that you do need to be kinder to yourself. And you can only kind of progress forward if you can demonstrate that you're, you know, that kind of kindness.
I guess just kind of like closing up now, I did want to quickly talk about, in one of your podcasts I heard you talk about like having parents who are quite like intense in terms of just like, you know, achieving the best that you can educational wise, and you got a first class similar to myself, and I'm just like, what made you, do you think that made you a go-getter in life in terms of like wanting more? Sometimes I find that people who do achieve really, really high grades or marks, or achieve great high things, sometimes it comes from like in terms of family, just like, you know, people who are pushing you to do more and be better, not necessarily in a negative way, but just in a positive kind of like, you know, you have that. Do you think that played a role in, you know, how you are now? I know you talked a bit about what you initially wanted to do, but do you think your family, your parents had an input in just making you
I am quite determined, definitely.
Yeah.
It's part of my personality. So, you know, that has, you know, that played a bit. The professionalism played a bit. And yes, family, of course. I'm from an Asian background. There are certain expectations with kind of grades in university and, you know, how you achieve. I had, my grandfather was a great role model for me personally, and kind of pushed me along the way in a very positive way. Always proud of my achievements. So there was an element of coming home with amazing grades and demonstrating to him that, you know, I was able to prove to him as well that, like, look, I've worked really hard and this is what I achieved, and he was really proud of me, and that was also a big part of my upbringing.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's quite similar with the African background as well. There's that pressure, and sometimes it seems as pressure when we're younger, but you know, it's that kind of like motivation to kind of go for more and know that you can achieve more.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that plays a big role. What would be your, I guess, line of encouragement for pharmacy students and pharmacists who are kind of like, you know I want to go for more. I know that I want to do more with my career. You know, they might not enjoy retail, they might not enjoy hospital. What would you say, you know, to them to kind of encourage them?
I say this all the time on the podcast because obviously a lot of my listeners are younger, whether they're students or kind of newly qualified.
Yeah.
Before you kind of think about what you're going to do, understand what you absolutely love about this career. Understand your passions, understand your love for whether it's chemistry, whether it's, you know, working in a lab, whether it's creating tablets and going down the industry route, whether it's communication, service improvement, finance, IT. You need to understand exactly what you love and use that to then follow your passions and follow your dreams. There's no point going into jobs because there are certain expectations like, oh, I should just go to community and just follow the standard pathway. Do what you love. That's what I've started to do. And it's taken me a while to get there. But then once you do chase that, you'll be happy in whatever you do. And, you know, identify what those passions are. And that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of reflection. Look at your day, your week, your month, and say, you know, what were the best things that happened this week or today? Once you write them down, you'll start visualizing and start identifying themes of things that happened. So it could be that within the span of a month, all you've documented are interactions with patients that you really, really enjoyed, and you made a difference to a patient's life, and that really made you happy. And then you start thinking, oh, well, actually, you know what? I absolutely love being with patients and I love communicating. So maybe I would be best suited to a clinic role with a chronic disease where I see the same patients over and over and again, and I can build that rapport, etc., etc. Or if you love all the kind of like guideline work or doing things that are relevant to kind of apps and project development, then chase that, get involved with everything that you can in the job that you're in, and then identify where you can actually find a job where that is the full-time job that you do.
Just to add to that, not to limit yourself or not to limit what is available, because there are so many things available out there for pharmacists. We just have to go looking for it. Sometimes it might take like doing an extra short course or, you know, maybe networking. Networking is so important. It might take that. And I think that once you have that in your mind, you just kind of open up more opportunities for yourself. So how can people reach out to you? I know there's probably a lot of people who would be interested in connecting or wanting to like find out more about you. What are the ways they can basically find you?
So the podcast is called Pharmacist Diaries, and it's available on most podcast platforms, so Apple, Google, Spotify, etc. I'm most active on LinkedIn under my full name, Anisha Patel. And on Instagram, which is Pharmacist Diaries UK. Those are the kind of main places that you'll find me. But I do have a profile for, you know, Twitter, but I'm not as active, to be honest, and Facebook as well. And then if you want to email me to get in touch, it's info@pharmacistdiaries.com.
So I'll put all that information in the description box below. Thank you so much,